Moving on a little bit from your experience in this case, what are the best strategies teachers can use to maintain motivation for adult learners? In your experience, what can
Yeah.
be the best motivation?
Um, I think when I think for adult learners compared to younger learners is when they see how what they're learning is connected to themselves, to whether it's their identity
Mm,
as a student of English or their identity as a student of economics or as an employer or as a worker of XYZ. I think when it connects to them and we can see how it's helping them get to where they want to go. I think that really helps maintain motivation. And obviously, seeing that progress, seeing that, you know, what kind of reader or writer was I, a year ago or 6 months ago to compare it to today? How was I speaking? What was my speaking fluency like, 6 months ago, a year ago compared to today? So I think when you're looking at those benchmarks a little bit and those
the
posts,
data,
those signposts along,
statistics.
yeah, the data along the way. I think that's really important. Um, and when I say data, I don't mean, tests or anything like that. I just mean, for you as a student, like your own data, your
Mhm.
own expressive, especially that expressive data, when you're looking at the speaking and the writing, how has that improved? And we know that, when we're learning an additional language, our receptive, so we can hear and we can read more than what we can say and write. And I think when that output, that expressive language becomes just a little more fluent, a little more confident, a little more stronger. I think, and somebody just when you feel confident speaking in a language that is not your home language, I think that's a huge motivation, a huge
Yes,
factor to keep you learning. Yeah.
true.
Hmm.
But now
Hmm.
we're talking about just the on the way to learn the second language. But what about
Hmm.
the multilinguals, the ones that already speak two languages, who are bilingual, and they're on the way
Hmm.
to the third language, fourth language? Maybe it can be easier, right? Maybe they're already motivated. They already know actually how to manage the languages and all that, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of research that tells us that, you know, having strong skills in your first language and then a second language can really support learning a third language, learning a fourth. A lot of those cross-linguistic transfers start to happen. So yeah, there's definitely research backing that up without a doubt. And I think too, sometimes you're in a situation where you have to learn this language. You've had a quick sudden move. Like I said, we're living in a world right now where things change very quickly
Yes.
overnight, and we can find ourselves in an environment that it's a bit of that sense of I'm here now and I need to be here and I just I need to do this. There's no choice, and in that respect, sometimes motivation isn't even part of the equation anymore at that point. It's necessity.
True. Are you a multilingual? Do you speak more than two languages?
I speak no, I speak English and French, a little bit of Japanese, but I'd consider myself
Cool.
bilingual. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Now, do you believe motivation is something teachers can build, or is it
Oh,
something that comes from learners themselves?
so intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. I think that's one of the biggest,
Yes.
one of the biggest, I think, debates, or one of the biggest.
Yes. The
I've
million
I've
dollar
always,
question.
yeah, it really is, and I can say as an educator, I've always felt that I would hope that motivation is intrinsic. It's coming from the student. I've always hoped that, but I do think a teacher can support motivation too. I really, really do. and I'll say the flip side of that is a student who's very motivated intrinsically, but doesn't feel supported by their teacher, doesn't feel heard, doesn't feel listened to. That can really negatively impact their intrinsic motivation.
Mm.
So I kind of think of them as like stepping stones. Ultimately, I can say that today. I think, you need a bit of both, and they kind of build on each other. That's what I would say. And I think, yeah, I think a teacher can motivate. However, I do think some of it needs to come from within as well.
Yes. I think we as teachers, we have to actually motivate students every day. Every time we're in a class, we got to motivate them. That's exactly what happened to me when I'm actually in the kindergarten with kids. I mean, with little babies over there. I got to motivate them to learn.
Mm,
That's pretty
absolutely.
tough.
Yeah.
Or the
Yeah, it
same thing
is.
with actually with adults, it's the same situation. Sometimes they actually just uh get off work and they just come to learn a little bit and they just sit down there and the last thing that they want to do is just learn or listen to someone talking. So
Mm,
to engage people, to motivate them to keep learning, even though they're very tired, it's a really hard
hmm
task, I would say.
hmm
And here comes
hmm
the part that actually says that teachers, we are we're all psychology, motivator, coach, teacher, blah, 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 blah. So many things. We got to try to learn
hmm
how to motivate the kids, the students, all the time.
mm.
That's pretty tough sometimes, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Today, one of the episodes came out actually in a podcast, and it's about these type of problems that we have as teachers. Because at least here in this side of the world, or the type of work that I've been actually doing here, I haven't actually felt the same way I was feeling it back home. Like every time
hmm
live in school, I used to get off work with tons of work, a lot of worksheets still like to grade over there and everything. And I haven't actually felt that thing here. So
Mm.
that's a lot of pressure. I don't know how we do it back home, but here to me, it's like holidays. It's like holidays.
Um, yeah, interesting, interesting. I think, yeah, I mean, it's interesting that attitude around homework and, quantity. I think I almost think it was Finland that, was one of the first countries to very publicly abolish homework. I think it was them.
Yeah,
Um,
it was them, Finland.
I think so.
Yeah,
And you're starting to see, more and more, I think, organizations and groups questioning, what is the value of homework. And uh, I remember somebody had
what's the
said this to
real
me. It's like,
value exactly? Yeah.
yeah, what's the real value? Um, and I think that somebody said oh, it's, futile at best and damaging at worst, or something like that. Like it just, the value is not there.
Mhm.
Um, and I
And
think
and
if
it's
a
not only
student,
homework.
no,
It's not
no,
only
it's not.
homework. It's all the pressure actually that you get from each student. Some of the students are actually going through very tough times. You
Mm,
absorb that. Also the psychological
mm,
aspect. Teachers actually carry a lot there. I don't
mm-hmm,
know about your experience here or traveling and do the teaching job that you've been actually doing, but I think it hits different when you travel.
mm. Um, I mean, I think it's interesting to see how different cultures, different communities, what is their approach to teaching and education. And I don't know that anyone is perfect, or right, I think some are maybe better, and some are still learning and reflecting. Um, I think one thing that we know is that, education it's very holistic, and it's not just the academics, like you talked about this just a few minutes ago. It's very social, it's very emotional. There's a lot going on. There's many moving parts,
Yes.
and I think some, like I said, some groups and some organizations are maybe a bit more aware of that than others. And not to say that one is better and one is
The other
worse,
one's
but it's
worse.
just,
Yeah.
we're just in different, on that continuum, on that journey, we're just all in different places.
We're gonna be very
Um,
diplomatic, not to hurt people's
yes.
feelings around.
Well, I do feel that way. I don't, I think,
Yes.
there's some things that some do very, very well. And I think of, countries where, where I've taught where, the parents are very involved, and other countries where, they're not at all involved, and which is better and which is right. And you know,
Hard
I
to
don't know
tell.
that yeah, it is. It's very hard to tell. And when I was in one environment, I said, well, no, this is the way that I know, and I believe in this, and I support this. And then you're out of that environment and you're teaching in a different environment. It's like, oh, well, now I'm going to rethink and reconsider what I thought was.
Yeah. When you thought it was good, then everything changed
Yes.
later. Yeah,
Yes, yeah,
it's true.
yes, and unfortunately, in where I was teaching for a long time in one environment, you couldn't really have parents in school for safety reasons. Doors were all locked, parents couldn't come in. Um, so they never really got to see their students in classroom. They never got to see them learning. They never got to see, and then I've worked in environments where parents, can come and go as they please, and it's a bit more open that way. And you know, and that has its cons too, believe it or not. Both have
Yeah.
their pros and cons. Um, but sitting here, having worked kind of in two environments that are such extremes, I can't say one is right and one is wrong and one is better and one is worse. Um, both both models are interesting. We'll leave it at
Both
that.
are actually doing the best they can. No,
Exactly.
that's fair.
And I
That,
and
that's
I
true.
and I do I do believe that. I do think that we are, like I said, we're learning more about how we learn, and I do think we're doing our best to move
True.
forward and to do what is best for, future generation of learners.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
True. Now, coming back a little bit to this other part, not so stressing. All right. Why do so many students now perform well on language exams, but freeze when speaking in real life? Have you seen these ones? Have you
Mm-hmm.
experienced that? Students actually, they're super good on exams. OG, they get
Yeah.
IELTS 9.5 like that. But suddenly,
Yeah.
when to actually just come and start talking and interact with other foreigners or whatever, they speak that language and they suddenly freeze. I don't know what to say. What did he say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, but the thing is, the two are very, very different. When you're writing an exam, you have time. It's not, it's live in the sense that it's happening right there and then. But when you're having a conversation, you need to answer right now. You don't have that. The thinking time is significantly
Yes.
reduced.
Yes.
When as opposed to when you're writing an exam, you've got that time. It's not that live, immediate response. And I think, some people, regardless of language, are just feel better in speaking. For example, whereas, it's just part of who they are, it's part of their makeup a little bit. Um, and we see that, with public speakers, some of them knew from a very young age, they could get up in front of a crowd of people and they can shine, but
Yeah.
maybe in that one-on-one, a bit more intimate conversation, smaller group, it's a bit more intimidating. I've got to be, it's a different type of engagement. But I think speaking in front of a group, or even just socially, there's a lot happening. There's body language, there's gestures, there's eye contact.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think especially when you're, speaking in a culture where you were maybe not raised and not educated, like I just mentioned, that whole
True.
thing of eye contact, for in some cultures it's very important, you need to maintain it. In others it's frowned upon, you avoid eye contact. And
Yeah.
sometimes, you're in a situation where,
What should I do?
somebody's looking at me and watching me, and I'm not used to this, and I
Yeah.
thought this was wrong, and what am I doing, and what am I doing, and what am I doing? It's very different. That there's a different sense of engagement, when you're speaking.
Hmm.
And it's uh and it's quick, it's fast, it's really fast.
Definitely.
We don't
Yeah.
realize like that. I mean, that really is fluency right there. It's about accuracy and automaticity, and
Yes. That's
you're
another part.
speaking this. Yeah, it's a lot when you think about it. It's a lot for the
Yeah,
brain.
it
It's
is actually a
cognitively,
lot.
it's
No,
heavy.
tell me
It's
about it.
very heavy. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
actually pretty hard for me. I mean, now that I've been trying to learn a little bit of Chinese and all that, it's really hard. Actually, when you
Mm-hmm.
want to actually just start like trying to talk a little bit, of course it's hard. Of course. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
not that easy when you're actually just one, like you said. Super
Yeah.
easy, but when you're actually in front of other people and you gotta talk, it's not only the
Mm-hmm.
language, but also your own pressure of looking good or not looking good or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
many
Mm-hmm.
psychological aspects that actually just come to you like a brainstorm. Oh no, I'm gonna be the
Yeah.
worst. I don't know. What am I saying? Blah blah. Terrible.
Yeah.
Capture
That
life precious moments in stunning details with our professional cameras. Unleash your creativity and preserve memories like never before. Visit us now at frameflowcn.com.
terrible.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
actually
And then,
happened to me.
we have
I'm
that
describing myself now.
yeah, and I was gonna say, you kind of have sometimes that devil, that voice that comes up behind that says, "No, don't say that. Why did you say that? What were you thinking?" Da, 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 da.
Yeah,
So it's like you've got that spoken voice and you've got that inner voice too. So you're juggling a couple voices.
I
Yeah.
remember. I remember when I was learning Russian, that happened to me as well, and it happened a
Mm-hmm.
lot. It happened a lot because Russian are pretty straightforward. So
Mm-hmm.
every time actually they used to say something, or I used to say something, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I will not
Yeah.
talk again. Thank you, no problem. So it's really hard. But
Mm-hmm.
well, if you could redesign the way languages are taught in schools, what would you change first? First thing, this is what I need to change. And with this, the rest can go.
Oh, God, one thing, goodness. I would say teaching language, and that could be vocabulary, that could be speaking, that could be anything, any component of reading or writing or listening or speaking, any of those domains that's taught in isolation. Um, I mean, there's so many things, but I think for me right now, there needs to be context. I think that's very important. And when there's context, it helps us understand why we're learning it. It helps us understand how it's connecting to me and to my life and to the realities and the vernacular that we're in. I think that's incredibly important. I think, language can be taught and it's not connected to anything. And because of that, it's a bit like, well, why am I learning this and how am I going to use this and how would I apply this and how would
Exactly.
I know I'm doing it correctly and I'm doing it the way it's meant to be? I think that's incredibly important.
Meaningful
And
learning.
yeah, really meaningful and purposeful. And I think when there's a rush, there's kind of an expiry date or there's a goal or there's an aggressive timeline, that gets maybe put to the side a little bit. And you get, I see this, for example, like, memorizing a word list, and the child can read it and they can spell it, but they can't use it. Well, what value does that bring to, successfully memorize 20 words a week beyond that you can't use, excuse me, beyond, the actual decoding of the word and
Yeah,
then the spelling of the word, and I th and I think sometimes, when we have curriculums and we have so much that we're trying to get through, it's important that these things be connected, and I do
true.
think if language was more, I'm talking a bit more now with children and adolescents, but if that language was connected to content and if we taught, language through history, through social studies, through geography, through physics, through
Clearly.
economics, through math, I think it would be very interesting to see how this impacts the application of a language. because that's ultimately, the success, is somebody able to use this, with
True.
accuracy, with automaticity in a variety of contexts. That's really,
That would be the first
what
thing that you would change at that
I I, I think I mean there are many things I would change, but I would say that is probably
to start
one
with.
of them. Yeah, I would say that's one of them.
To
And
start
I
with.
think yeah, and we're seeing that move, in the US they've changed their Common Core standards and they've really
Yes.
connected reading now to content. So we are
Uh-huh.
really starting to see that shift on a large scale level.
True.
Um, yeah, I would say that's probably,
I'm with you.
I mean,
I will do
there are many, but
exactly the same. I think that's
yeah.
the first one. Yeah. It has to be meaningful. I've actually
Hmm.
just from my own experience, I've actually seen that. I mean, it's so useless actually just to be in front of a classroom and
Hmm. Hmm.
making them just repeat the word, learn the word. Okay, can you use the word?
Yeah.
No. I had a student, I was actually just preparing a student for TOEFL. And I remember
Mm.
the first class, I was like, okay, let's start. I mean, I would like to know how your vocabulary is. I mean, where you're standing right now. So I would just check in that vocabulary. And then suddenly he said, no, 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 don't worry, Mike. I can learn 3,000 words for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hmm.
And that stays there in my head. I mean, ringing
Yeah.
until now. It's like, wow, 3,000 words. But
Yeah.
is it meaningful? No. But that's a good point
Hmm.
actually that you have there. That's the first step.
Yeah.
I agree with you. You got it.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, for
talking
sure.
about some myths, the myths here.
Hmm. Hmm.
Da-da-da-da. We have children are naturally better language learners.
Mm.
Is that a myth?
I think so. I think so. And I'm going to kind of loop back to what I said at the beginning here. I think students just have more exposure, younger learners, excuse me, have more exposure. Children have more exposure to a
Yes.
language before they're expected to, engage in the literacy, for example, like the reading and the writing. So I think that's, if you kind of unpacked that myth a little bit, I think that's what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. What about here? The second one. You need talent to learn languages.
What would you give me an example of a
Like
talent?
you gotta be talented for learning languages. You gotta have that talent, inner talent. Like you were born with that talent.
Like you're like you have an affinity for languages, like you're a
Yeah, yeah,
language
that's it. Yeah, you were
person.
born, then it's very easy for you to learn languages. So
No, I'm going
in
to
order
say
to learn
that's
languages, you gotta be talented. Like you gotta have the talent.
no, I think that's definitely a myth. I think that was very I forget the name now, but I remember when I was doing my teacher preparation, there was this, all these um, forms of intelligence and et cetera. And now we're saying, it's
Oh, the multiple
been,
intelligences, you mean?
yes, and all these, and, you could be like, audio, visual, kinesthetic, this, that. There were, I think,
Oh,
nine or
yeah, yeah,
11.
yeah, yeah.
I can't remember. I think,
Inter, yeah,
yeah. And now we're
Bloom's
realizing
taxonomy, you
it's
mean?
not, no, not quite that, but just, um, this sense that you were a math person or you were a language person, or and it was kind of what you were born with, and this idea that this is the kind of the learner that you were. So I'm going to say it's a definite myth. I'm going to say it's a definite myth. Yeah.
I actually think so too. Because we're
Hmm.
all actually intelligent, we're all smart, but of course, we
Hmm.
got some specific parts of the brain that works actually more than the other one. I'm pretty
Hmm.
bad at math, so
Yeah, I think too.
super
It's
bad.
sometimes just I know I didn't like math as a child, so I just did badly in math. I just didn't like it. I always liked, reading and writing, and I
Yes.
always just really, I loved reading as a child. But and I was kind of, I failed math many times in high school, spent many summers in summer school, doing remedial math. I'm a very intelligent person, and I know that. But I just did not like math. I thought my
Exactly.
numbers are boring and they're dry, and I was like, words are interesting to me, and really so much to say and engaging, and I love that an author could describe a field over 3 pages. And,
Yeah.
I just love that. I just found it, there was a certain, it just loved that about languages. And whereas some people, for it's the complete opposite as me, they think numbers are fascinating and the science of numbers and what we can do with them. And,
I've
that's going
seen
to
them.
definitely impact how you appreciate and how you engage with the
Yeah.
subject. And as a teacher, I did not enjoy teaching math, and moved away from math and focused on languages for the last eight
Yes.
years of my teaching career for that reason. But I think we've collapsed that a little bit to think that, because I don't like that subject, I'm not a math person.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the truth at all. And obviously, I didn't really like physics either, but I really liked biology, for example.
Mm.
So because physics was, a lot more rooted in math and numbers, whereas, my biology textbook was like this in high school, and there was a lot of reading, and I
You
could
love it.
handle that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that. So, but I think we've taken that and we've kind of taken it to a bit of an extreme. So it's, yeah, to answer your question, it's a definite myth.
Nice. All right. What about the next one? The myth number three. Perfect grammar leads to fluency.
Ooh, that is a good one. That is a very good one. Um,
Perfect grammar.
I I don't I don't think it needs to be perfect. I don't think it needs to be perfect. I think
Okay.
it needs to be I think it needs to be good. And I think it needs to be correct most of the time, but I don't think it needs to be correct 100% of the time. Because, even if your grammar is not 100, percent correct all the time, I still understand what you're trying to say. I can still engage, I can still communicate, I can still, make sense of what you're saying. So I think it's if you're saying 100%, I'm going to say that's a bit of a myth. I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
No, no, I mean that's your perspective, it's like that. I also believe the same. I don't think actually you need to be like a grammarian, like know all the grammar
Hmm.
in the world and you're gonna be fluent.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
not reality. That's not
Exactly.
reality. I mean, to be
Yeah.
fluent, I think grammar it's part of something that make you sound a lot better, make you sound appropriately, according to the
Hmm.
moment or according to what you're saying, what you're not saying, whatever.
Hmm.
So, but fluency, it's a different skill, I would say.
Hmm. Hmm.
It needs
Hmm.
grammar, but you don't need to be like a pretty knowledgeable person in grammar
Hmm.
to be
Hmm.
fluent.
Yeah. And there's a lot of factors that impact, fluency. Vocabulary, for example, is another one too. You can have excellent grammar, but if
Hmm.
your vocabulary, your mental lexicon of words is still small and limited, that's going to impact fluency. Absolutely.
True. And
Hmm.
one of the last one, well, the last myth, adults can never reach native like proficiency.
Um, in
Adults,
speaking, do you mean in
ooh,
speaking? Or
oh, well, proficiency.
that I'm going to say is a myth. I definitely think adults can achieve proficiency. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, but if you
Yeah.
have to actually just put them in different skills, you would say not.
Well, I think it depends a little bit, if you're talking about speaking proficiency, writing
Yeah.
proficiency, I think it
Let's go
depends
with
a little bit
speaking.
on speaking. No, I think absolutely they can absolutely they can achieve it. Absolutely. I
Mm.
think who was it? It was an actress, an Australian actress, I forget her name, but years ago she had given an interview and she was talking about moving from Australia to the US and doing her first US film. And originally they thought she could just keep her accent, and then they realized when they started filming, they're like, no, we want you to be like sound like an American. And she talked about how she had to really enunciate her words, when she had to, read the script. And
Yeah.
and then at the end of that, she essentially sounded like she was American. It had just
Crazy.
completely, because of all that learning she had done and that kind of learning to relearn, so to speak, that she had to engage in. She can now kind of speak the two. So should I say that,
Mhm.
she when she's back in Australia, she picks up that pronunciation, and then when she's, back in the US working, she can
Go
shift
back to
to
that
that.
one. Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. So I do think it can happen, but I don't think these things just happen automatically either. I do think it takes time, it takes effort, as with everything. Anytime we're
It's
acquiring a
true.
new skill, it takes
That's
time
true.
and it
That's
takes
true.
effort. Yeah, yeah.
Well, now we're reaching the 1 hour. Oh my goodness, I'm taking 60 minutes from you. I'm sorry. Well, to get to the final part of this time talking and you sharing
hmm
your experience and everything. If someone listening today feels discouraged about learning a language later in life, what would you say
hmm
to them?
You mean as an adult? If an
Yes.
adult?
Yes.
Um, I think it's easy to assume that children are going to be better learners, because they're younger and they have more time and they whatnot. But I think as adults, you just have to find the right conditions, and you have to find your motivation to 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 learn. I think, as a child, you're not going to be, I saw this as a French teacher. They weren't there because, a 5-year-old woke up and said, "Oh, I want to learn French today and I want to be a fluent native French like speaker."
Yes.
No, your parents made that decision for you. You had no say in it whatsoever. Um, I'm sure we see that in our current context as well. But I think with an adult, it's a little bit different because they are not always, but quite often they're the ones making that choice, making the decision. So I think just stay true to, why you're here, what goals you have, and knowing that what the researchers told us 20, 30, 40 years ago, we know today is not accurate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And now,
Mhm.
what about the teachers? What would you tell teachers, a piece of advice to language teachers around the world?
Oh, um,
Quit. Quit.
no, no, no. Um, I would say, I think something that's really important is just we're learning more about how we learn. And I think as teachers, it's important that we continue to upskill ourselves and stay aware and on top of current research and um, what what we know before is maybe no longer what we should be doing today. And I think if when teachers are open to that,
Mhm.
I think it makes everybody in this whole teaching, world of pedagogy and education, everyone is more successful. Students
Yeah,
and teachers and parents, everyone in the community is more successful. Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you very much, friend.
You're
Thank
very
you very
welcome.
much. It was an amazing time. Thank you for sharing all your notes, your knowledge, and helping this community to grow a little bit more.
Thank you very
I want to say
much.
something. It was amazing. How can people reach you if they want to actually talk to you or something or
They could reach me
coaching?
on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So, yep,
LinkedIn,
please.
basically. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Pretty much
That's
for
it.
now. Yeah.
Cool. No problem. Amazing. So thank you very much, friend. This is your space. Anytime that you would like to share something with us, it will be an honor to have you again.
Okay. Thank you. And once again, thank you for having me so much. It was great, great, an honor to be here with you today.
Thank you very much. See you next time.